Your mind is constantly producing thoughts, thousands every day. Like waves upon an ocean, they rise and fall, appear and disappear. Some are gentle, barely noticed. Others crash with force, demanding attention. Most pass unnoticed, dissolving back into the silence from which they came. But some take root. They settle into the soil of your consciousness. They grow, they spread, and slowly, imperceptibly, they begin to shape how you feel and act. A single thought about not being good enough becomes a belief about your worth. A fleeting worry about the future becomes chronic anxiety. A momentary judgment about yourself becomes the voice you hear most often in your mind. This is how thoughts gain power, not through their content but through your relationship with them. The greatest challenge isn't that we have negative thoughts, it's that we believe them. We treat them as facts rather than mental events. We mistake them for reality rather than interpretation. We identify with them so completely that we forget where the thought ends and we begin. I'm not good enough stops being a thought and becomes who you are. Something bad will happen stops being a fear and becomes your future. I always fail stops being a story and becomes your destiny. But here is the truth that changes everything. Thoughts are not facts. They are mental phenomena. Events in consciousness. Patterns of neural activity that arise and pass away. They feel true. They feel important. They feel like you, but they are not. You are the awareness in which thoughts appear, the space that holds them, the sky in which these clouds of thought drift and dissolve. And when you recognize this, or I truly recognize it, not just intellectually but experientially, everything shifts. True mental freedom begins the moment you recognize a thought as just that, a thought, not a fact. Not your identity, not a command you must obey, not a truth you must accept, just mental noise passing through the sky of your consciousness. This recognition is simple, but not easy. Because your thoughts have been running the show for so long, you've forgotten you have a choice. You've been so identified with the voice in your head that you've forgotten you are not the voice. You are the one listening to it. But you can remember. You can wake up from the trance of thought. You can reclaim your mind. This is what this audiobook is about. Not positive thinking, not affirmations, not replacing negative thoughts with positive ones, but something deeper, more fundamental, more liberating, the mastery of thought, the ability to see thoughts clearly without being swept away by them, to recognize patterns before they take control, to sense the stirrings of negativity before they become storms. This mastery doesn't come from fighting your thoughts. Fighting only makes them stronger. What you resist persists. It comes from awareness, from observation, from a gentle, persistent practice of noticing what arises in your mind without judgment, without identification, without becoming lost in the content. Like watching clouds pass across the sky. You see them, you notice their shapes, but you don't climb into them. You don't become them. You simply watch as they drift by. This is the art we'll explore together, not through willpower or control, but through understanding and awareness. You'll learn to recognize negative thinking as it emerges, to see the patterns that have been running unconsciously, to sense the early signs of mental turbulence before it becomes overwhelming. And gradually, with practice, you'll discover something remarkable. You have far more space in your mind than you realized. Space between stimulus and response, space between thought and belief, space between mental activity and your essential nature. In that space, there is freedom, peace, clarity. Not because you've eliminated negative thoughts. You haven't and you won't. They're part of being human, part of having a brain that evolved to scan for threats and solve problems. But because you've changed your relationship with them, you've stopped believing every thought that crosses your mind. You've stopped identifying with every story your mind tells. You've become the observer, not the observed. The sky, not the weather. The awareness, not the thought. This is mastery, and it's available to you right now in this moment. Not someday when you're more evolved or more healed or more enlightened, but now. Because the awareness you need is already present. It's what's reading these words. It's what's aware of your thoughts even as they arise. You already have everything you need. You're simply learning to recognize what's always been here. So take a breath, settle into this moment. Notice what it feels like to be here right now, aware of your own awareness. This simple act of noticing is the beginning of mastery, and every moment of noticing strengthens your capacity to remain free from the tyranny of thought. The journey begins here, Not somewhere else. Not at some other time. Right here. Right now, with this breath, this awareness, this choice. Let's explore together how to recognize negative thinking before it takes control, how to observe your mind without becoming its victim, how to live with thoughts without being defined by them. This is the path to mental freedom, and it starts with a simple recognition. You are not your thoughts. You are the space in which thoughts appear. And that space is vast, peaceful, and unshakable. Welcome to the mastery of thought. Welcome home to yourself. Chapter 1. The nature of negative thoughts. Negative thoughts are not enemies. They are signals. This simple statement changes everything, because most of us have been taught to fight our negative thoughts, to suppress them, to replace them with positive affirmations, to pretend they don't exist. But fighting creates resistance, and resistance creates suffering. What if, instead of fighting, we listened? What if we approached our negative thoughts with curiosity rather than judgment? What if we saw them not as problems to be solved, but as messengers bringing important information? They reveal areas where you have unresolved fear, unhealed pain, or unmet needs. Every negative thought has a source, a root, a reason for being. The thought, "I'm not good enough," might be tracing back to childhood experiences of criticism or comparison. The thought, "something bad will happen," might be connected to past trauma or loss. The thought, "I always fail," might be protecting you from the vulnerability of trying. These thoughts aren't random. They're not arbitrary attacks from a hostile universe. They're your psyche's attempt to protect you, to warn you, to help you navigate a world that once felt dangerous. The problem isn't that these thoughts exist. It's that they're operating on outdated information. Your mind is still protecting you from threats that may no longer exist, still warning you about dangers that have passed, still trying to keep you safe using strategies that worked once but no longer serve you. This is the nature of negative thinking. It's a protection mechanism that has become overactive, an alarm system that's too sensitive, a guard that sees threats where none exist. And when you understand this, when you see that you're negative, thoughts are trying to help you, however misguided their methods, something softens. You can stop fighting them, stop hating them, stop feeling broken because they exist. Instead, you can acknowledge them, thank them for trying to protect you, and gently show them that you're safe now, that you can handle more than they think you can, that you don't need their constant warnings anymore. But when you identify with them, they take control. Here's where things become complicated, because there's a difference between having a thought and being a thought. When you have a thought, it's an event in your awareness, like a sound in the distance or a bird flying across your field of vision. It appears, it's noticed, and it passes. But when you are the thought, when you identify with it so completely that you can't separate yourself from it, it becomes your reality, your truth, your identity. The thought, "I'm not good enough," becomes, "I am not good enough." The mental event becomes a statement of fact. The passing cloud becomes the entire sky. This identification is subtle. It happens so quickly, so automatically, that you don't even notice it occurring. A thought arises. "They probably don't like me." Immediately, without pause, without question, you believe it. You become it. You start seeing evidence everywhere. You interpret every interaction through this lens. You feel the emotions that come with this belief. You act from this assumption, and all of this happens because you identified with a thought. You mistook mental activity for reality. You forgot that thoughts are just thoughts. Breaking this identification is the key to freedom. Not changing the thoughts, not making them more positive, but simply recognizing them as mental events rather than facts about reality. This is what we mean by learning to observe rather than absorb your thoughts. Let's explore what this actually means, because it's easy to understand intellectually but much harder to practice experientially. Absorbing a thought means taking it in completely, believing it without question, letting it become your emotional state, your behavior, your sense of self. When you absorb the thought, "I'm going to fail," you feel anxiety. Your body tenses. Your mind starts planning for failure. You might avoid the challenge altogether. The thought has been absorbed into your entire being. Observing a thought means seeing it as a mental event, noticing it arise, recognizing its content, but not merging with it. Not letting it dictate your feelings or actions. When you observe the thought, "I'm going to fail," you notice, there's the failing thought again. You see it like you'd see a bird flying past your window. It's there. You see it. But you don't become it. You don't fly away with it. This might sound simple, and in a way it is, but it requires a fundamental shift in how you relate to your mental activity. Most people are so immersed in their thoughts that they can't imagine standing outside them. They are the narrator and the story and the audience all at once, unable to separate these roles. But you can learn. Through practice, through patience, through persistent, gentle effort to notice the difference between awareness and content. Between the one who watches and what is being watched. Take a moment right now. Notice that you're reading these words. But notice also that there's an awareness that's reading, a presence that's noticing the reading. That presence, that awareness, is always there, always stable, always watching. It sees thoughts come and go, but it doesn't change with them. You are that awareness, not the thoughts, not the emotions, not the stories your mind tells. You are the unchanging presence in which all of these arise and pass away. Learning to observe rather than absorb your thoughts is the first step to reclaiming your mind. Let's go deeper into how this works practically, because understanding is one thing, application is another. When a negative thought arises, most people immediately react. They either believe the thought and feel bad, or they fight the thought and create internal conflict. Both reactions are forms of absorption. Both give the thought power. Both treat it as something real and important that must be dealt with. But observation offers a third way, a way that neither believes nor fights, a way that simply sees. Here's what it looks like. A thought arises. I'm such a failure. Instead of immediately feeling terrible, absorption, or immediately countering with, no, I'm not, resistance, you pause. You notice. There's a thought about being a failure. Just that simple recognition creates space. A gap between the thought and your reaction to it. A moment of freedom. In that gap, you can ask, is this thought true, or is it just a thought? You can observe. This is the failure thought pattern. It shows up when I'm stressed. It's familiar. It's just doing what it always does. You can recognize. This thought is trying to protect me from disappointment. It's trying to lower my expectations so I won't be hurt. Thank you, thought. I see you. But I don't need your protection right now. This is observation. This is the practice of witnessing your mental activity without getting swept away by it. And the more you practice this, the more natural it becomes. The gap between thought and reaction widens. The space in your mind expands. The identification loosens. You begin to realize something profound. You've been living in a prison of thought, and the door has always been open. Now let's acknowledge something important. Negative thoughts serve a purpose. This is why trying to eliminate them entirely is misguided. Your brain evolved to scan for threats, to anticipate problems, to remember past dangers so you could avoid them in the future. This negativity bias kept your ancestors alive. It's wired into your neurology. Negative thoughts alert you to potential issues. They help you prepare. They encourage caution in genuinely risky situations. They protect you from making the same mistakes repeatedly. The problem isn't that negative thoughts exist. It's that they operate without wisdom, without discernment, without knowing when they're helpful and when they're just noise. Your ancient brain can't tell the difference between a physical threat and a social embarrassment, between actual danger and anticipated discomfort, between a life-threatening situation and a challenging conversation, so it treats everything like a threat. It sends out warning signals constantly. It keeps you in a state of vigilance that was necessary for survival thousands of years ago, but is exhausting and counterproductive now. Understanding this helps you relate to your negative thoughts with more compassion. They're not evidence that you're broken or weak. They're evidence that you have a brain that's trying to keep you safe, even when safety isn't the issue. This compassionate understanding is crucial, because if you approach your negative thoughts with judgment, if you hate yourself for having them, if you see them as flaws or failures, you create more negativity. You're having negative thoughts about having negative thoughts. Instead, approach with curiosity, with kindness, with the recognition that these thoughts are part of being human. Everyone has them. Even the calmest, most enlightened people experience negative thinking. The difference is in how they relate to it. They don't identify. They don't absorb. They observe with awareness and compassion. Let's explore a powerful practice. Welcoming your negative thoughts. This might sound counterintuitive. Why would you welcome something you're trying to be free from? But this is the paradox of transformation. What you resist persists, but what you welcome transforms. When a negative thought arises and you welcome it, when you say, "Hello, fear, hello, self-doubt, hello, worry, I see you, you're welcome here," something magical happens. The thought loses its power, because power comes from resistance, from the energy you put into fighting it, suppressing it, pretending it's not there. When you welcome it instead, there's nothing to fight against. The thought arises, is seen, is acknowledged, and naturally passes. Like a wave that rises and falls. This doesn't mean you believe the thought. It doesn't mean you act on it. It just means you stop adding resistance to its presence. Try this now if you're willing. Think of a recurring negative thought you have, something that shows up regularly. Now, instead of pushing it away or feeling bad about it, welcome it. Say internally, "Welcome. I see you. It's okay that you're here." Notice what happens. Often just this simple act of welcoming dissolves the intensity. The thought is still there, but it's less charged, less urgent, less believable. This is because you've stopped feeding it with resistance. You've stopped giving it the attention and energy that makes it grow. Welcoming doesn't mean indulging. It doesn't mean wallowing in negativity. It means acknowledging what's present without judgment, without identification, without getting lost in it. It means seeing thoughts as weather patterns in your mind, sometimes sunny, sometimes stormy, always changing, never permanent. And just as you don't identify with the weather outside, "I am this rainstorm," you don't need to identify with the weather. Inside, "I am this anxious thought." You are the sky that holds all weather, vast, spacious, unchanging, beneath the changes. Understanding the nature of negative thoughts changes your entire relationship with your mind. You stop seeing your thoughts as the enemy. You stop fighting a war against your own mental activity. You stop believing that having negative thoughts means something is wrong with you. Instead, you see them as they are: automatic patterns, outdated protections, neural habits that can be observed and gradually changed through awareness. This seeing, this clear, compassionate observation is the foundation of mastery, not control. Not suppression, not forced positivity, but awareness. Observation. Recognition of what is, without judgment, without identification, without being swept away. From this foundation, everything else becomes possible. The patterns can be seen, the triggers can be identified, the early warning signs can be recognized, and gradually, imperceptibly at first but undeniably over time, your mind becomes clearer, quieter, more spacious. Not because you've eliminated negative thoughts, but because you've changed how you relate to them. You've learned to observe rather than absorb, to witness rather than identify, to hold thoughts lightly rather than gripping them tightly. This is the nature of negative thoughts. They're signals, not truths. Messengers, not masters. Mental events, not reality. And once you see this clearly, once you experience it directly rather than just understanding it intellectually, you've taken the first essential step toward mastery, the step of recognition, of seeing what is, of knowing the difference between thoughts and the awareness that holds them. From here we can go deeper. We can explore how to recognize these thoughts as they arise before they gain momentum. We can learn to see the patterns that have been running unconsciously. But it all starts here, with understanding the nature of what we're working with seeing negative thoughts not as enemies but as signals, not as facts but as mental events, not as you, but as something arising in the vast awareness that you are. Take a breath. Notice the space in your mind right now. Notice that even as you read about thoughts, there's an awareness that's steady, quiet, watching it all. That awareness is your true nature. That space is your home. And from that space, all thoughts, negative or positive, are simply passing clouds in an infinite sky. This is where mastery begins. With this simple recognition, this profound shift in perspective, you are not your thoughts. You never were. You are the awareness in which thoughts appear. Remember this. Return to this. Make this the foundation of your practice, and everything else will follow. Let's explore a deeper layer of understanding, because the nature of negative thoughts is more subtle than it first appears. Consider this. Negative thoughts often masquerade as helpful analysis or realistic assessment. They dress themselves up as wisdom, as prudence, as just being honest, I'm just being realistic. When I say this won't work out, I'm just protecting myself by assuming the worst. I'm just being honest about my limitations. But there's a difference between genuine discernment and negative thinking, between realistic assessment and automatic negativity, between honest self-awareness and self-limiting beliefs. Genuine discernment is clear, calm, and specific. It assesses situations without emotional charge. It sees what is without adding layers of interpretation or meaning. Negative thinking, on the other hand, is emotionally charged. It generalizes. It predicts disaster. It makes everything about your inadequacy or the world's hostility. Learning to distinguish between these is crucial. Because if you can't tell the difference, you'll mistake negative thinking for truth. You'll follow its guidance into limitation, avoidance, and suffering. Here's a practice to help you distinguish. When a thought arises that feels negative, ask yourself these questions. Is this thought helping me solve a problem, or is it just creating anxiety? Is this thought based on current reality, or is it predicting a catastrophic future? Is this thought specific and actionable, or vague and generalizing? Is this thought delivered with calm clarity, or with emotional intensity? These questions help you see the difference between wisdom and worry, between discernment and negativity. And when you can see that difference, you can choose which voice to listen to. You can honor genuine discernment while gently setting aside the noise of automatic negativity. Now, let's talk about the body. Because negative thoughts don't exist only in your mind. They create a felt experience in your body. Anxiety tightens your chest. Worry knots your stomach. Self-doubt hunches your shoulders. Shame contracts your entire being. These physical sensations are important signals. They often appear before the thought becomes conscious. Before you can name what you're thinking, you feel the physical tension of negative thinking building. This is valuable information, because if you can catch the physical sensation early, you can interrupt the thought pattern before it fully forms. You feel your chest tightening. Instead of waiting for the anxious thoughts to flood in, you pause. You breathe. You relax the physical tension, and often the thoughts dissolve before they gain momentum. This is working with negative thinking at the somatic level, not just observing thoughts, but noticing the body's response and intervening there. Try this. Scan your body right now. Notice where you're holding tension. Your jaw, your shoulders, your belly. Wherever you find tension, breathe into it. Imagine the breath softening that area. Consciously relax. Often, just this simple physical release prevents negative thought patterns from taking hold. Because the body and mind are one system. Change one, and you change the other. Let's also explore the role of attention in negative thinking, because attention is what feeds thoughts. What you pay attention to grows stronger. When a negative thought arises and you focus on it intensely, analyzing it, arguing with it, trying to figure out if it's true, you're feeding it. You're giving it energy. You're making it more real, more solid, more powerful. But when a negative thought arises and you simply note it without focusing on it, oh, there's a negative thought, and then redirect your attention elsewhere, the thought weakens. It loses energy. It fades. This is a crucial skill. The ability to notice without engaging, to see without being absorbed, to acknowledge without feeding. It's like walking past an aggressive dog. If you stop, make eye contact, engage with it, the situation escalates. But if you calmly keep walking, maintaining awareness but not engagement, the dog loses interest. Your negative thoughts are the same. They want engagement. They want you to take them seriously, analyze them, fight with them. But you can simply keep walking. Keep your attention on your breath, on the present moment, on what you're actually doing rather than what you're thinking about doing. This redirecting of attention is a practice. At first it feels difficult. Your mind will pull you back to the negative thought repeatedly. That's normal. That's the habit asserting itself. But each time you notice you've been pulled back and you gently redirect again, you're weakening that habit. You're training your mind to place attention where you choose rather than where old patterns demand. Over time, this becomes easier, more natural. Your attention becomes flexible, responsive, under your conscious direction, rather than controlled by automatic patterns. This is freedom, not the absence of negative thoughts, but the ability to choose whether to engage with them. There's something else important to understand about the nature of negative thoughts. They often contain a grain of truth wrapped in layers of distortion. "I might not succeed at this" contains the truth that success isn't guaranteed, but it gets distorted into "I will definitely fail," or "I never succeed at anything," or "I'm not capable." "That person seemed upset" contains the observation that someone appeared distressed, but it gets distorted into "they're upset with me," or "I did something wrong," or "everyone hates me." Learning to extract the grain of truth from the distortion is an advanced skill. It requires you to look at the thought clearly, without either believing it entirely or dismissing it entirely. You look for what's actually true, what's actually being signaled, and you set aside the catastrophizing, generalizing, and personalizing that your mind has added. This extraction of truth is like panning for gold. You sift through the sediment of distortion to find the valuable information underneath. And when you do this skillfully, you honor the intelligence of your psyche while refusing to be controlled by its unskillful exaggerations. Let's practice this together. Think of a recent negative thought you've had, something that's been recurring lately. Now ask, what's the grain of truth here? What legitimate concern or observation is at the core of this thought? Strip away the catastrophizing. Strip away the generalizations. Strip away the self-judgment. What remains? Often what remains is something quite simple. A genuine concern that can be addressed, a valid observation that can inform action, a real need that can be met. When you extract this truth, you can respond to it appropriately. You can take action on the legitimate concern while releasing the distorted thinking that surrounded it. This is mastery in practice. Not denying negative thoughts, not believing them fully, but extracting what's useful and releasing what's not. Understanding the nature of negative thoughts also means recognizing their impermanence. Thoughts are temporary. They arise and they pass. But when you're caught in one, it feels permanent. It feels like this is how you'll feel forever. Like this thought defines your reality. But if you observe carefully, you'll notice. Thoughts change. Constantly. What felt overwhelmingly true 5 minutes ago has faded. What seemed so important an hour ago no longer matters. This impermanence is crucial to recognize. Because when you're in the midst of negative thinking, if you can remember this will pass, you don't get so lost in it. You can wait it out, like waiting out a storm. You take shelter, you stay grounded, but you don't believe the storm is permanent. You know the sun will return. Your thoughts are the same. Negative thinking arises, sometimes intensely, but it always passes. Always. If you don't feed it, if you don't identify with it, it passes relatively quickly. But if you believe it's permanent, if you think "I'm always like this" or "I'll never get past this," you create suffering that extends far beyond the thought itself. So remember, this too shall pass. This thought, this mood, this mental state, it's temporary. Like weather, always changing, never fixed. This remembrance is a form of wisdom, a perspective that allows you to ride out mental storms without being destroyed by them. Finally, let's talk about compassion. Because understanding the nature of negative thoughts includes understanding how hard you've been on yourself for having them. You've probably spent years judging yourself for negative thinking, feeling ashamed of your anxiety, angry at your self-doubt, frustrated with your worry. But this self-judgment is just more negative thinking. It's the same pattern, turned on itself. What if instead you could meet your negative thoughts with compassion, with the understanding that they're not your fault? They're not evidence of weakness, they're just part of having a human brain. What if you could say to yourself, "Of course I have negative thoughts. Everyone does. This is what minds do. There's nothing wrong with me for experiencing this. This self-compassion doesn't indulge the thoughts. It doesn't make them true. It simply removes the additional layer of suffering that comes from judging yourself for being human. And when you remove that layer, the original negative thought often loses much of its power. Because you're no longer fighting yourself. You're no longer divided against yourself. You're whole. Accepting. Present with what is, without adding judgment on top of it. This wholeness, this self-compassion, is part of mastery, perhaps the most important part. Because you can have all the techniques in the world, but if you use them to wage war on yourself, to prove you should be different than you are, they'll only create more suffering. But when you approach your mind with kindness, with curiosity, with the gentle persistence of a good friend, transformation becomes natural, effortless, organic. The nature of negative thoughts is this: they're part of being human. They arise from ancient protective mechanisms, from unhealed wounds, from the brain's bias toward seeing threats. They're signals, not truths, events, not identities, temporary, not permanent, and most importantly, they're not you. They arise in you, in the vast awareness that you are, but they don't define you. They don't limit you. They don't control you unless you give them that power through identification and belief. When you understand this deeply, when you see it not just intellectually but experientially, you've laid the foundation for all that follows. From here we can build. We can learn to recognize these thoughts earlier, to see patterns, to sense them before they fully form. But it all rests on this foundation, knowing the nature of what you're working with, seeing thoughts as thoughts, understanding that awareness is primary and thoughts are secondary. You are the awareness, vast, spacious, unchanging. And in that awareness, all thoughts, negative and positive, are simply passing phenomena, not problems, not enemies, not truths, just signals, just weather, just the natural activity of a human mind. When you see this clearly, you're free, not free from negative thoughts, but free in relation to them. And that freedom is what we're cultivating. That's the mastery we're developing. That's the peace that awaits you on the other side of this understanding. Breathe. Notice the space in your mind. Recognize the awareness that's been here all along, watching thoughts come and go. That awareness is home. That awareness is freedom. That awareness is you. Everything else is just weather, passing through an infinite sky. Chapter 2. Recognition. Seeing the invisible, most people live unaware of their mental weather. They move through their days, reacting to thoughts without knowing they're reacting, following mental impulses without recognizing they have a choice, believing internal narratives without questioning their validity. Their thoughts drift like clouds, unnoticed until they turn into storms. By the time they become aware of what's happening mentally, they're already caught in the storm, already overwhelmed by anxiety, consumed by worry, or trapped in negative spirals. The thoughts have gained momentum. They've triggered emotions. They've influenced behavior. They've created a reality that feels solid, unchangeable, true. But it didn't have to go that way. Because there was a moment, a brief window of opportunity, when the thought first arose. When it was still small, still forming, still possible to observe without being swept away. That moment is everything, and learning to catch thoughts in that moment is the first level of mastery. The first level of mastery is simple recognition. Simple, but not easy. Because recognizing thoughts requires something most people haven't developed: metacognitive awareness. The ability to be aware of your own awareness, to observe your own mental processes. It's like having a witness inside your mind, a calm presence that watches thoughts arise, notices their content, observes their effects, all without getting tangled up in them. This witness isn't judgmental. It doesn't criticize you for having certain thoughts. It doesn't try to change or suppress anything. It simply sees, clearly, accurately, compassionately. Developing this witnessing capacity is the foundation of all mental mastery. Without it, you're at the mercy of every thought that crosses your mind. With it, you have space, choice, freedom. Start by noticing when negativity appears. This sounds simple, but try it for a day, and you'll discover how much negativity flows through your mind unnoticed. The small judgments about yourself, the worries about future events, the replaying of past mistakes, the comparing yourself to others, the catastrophizing about potential problems. It's constant, a background hum of negativity that colors your experience without you even realizing it. But once you start paying attention, once you begin to notice, the volume of this mental activity becomes obvious. Almost startling. I'm so stupid. There it is. This will probably go wrong. There's another. They don't really like me. And another. The thoughts keep coming. And for the first time, you're actually seeing them, not lost in them, not believing them automatically, just seeing them. This seeing is powerful, because once you see something clearly, it loses some of its unconscious control over you. A thought that operates in darkness, unexamined, has tremendous power, but bring it into the light of awareness and it becomes just a thought, mental activity, not truth. So the practice begins here. Notice when negativity appears. Throughout your day, as you go about your activities, maintain a gentle awareness of your mental state, not constant vigilance, not exhausting self-monitoring, just a light background awareness, like peripheral vision for your thoughts. And when you notice negativity arising, simply acknowledge it. No need to do anything else yet. Just notice. Just see. There's a negative thought, that's enough. That simple recognition creates a shift, a gap, a moment of non-identification. You're not the thought. You're the one noticing the thought. And that distinction, however subtle, is the beginning of freedom. Name it gently. This is fear. This is worry. This is judgment. Naming is a powerful practice. It's been validated by neuroscience research. When you label an emotion or thought, activity shifts from the emotional centers of your brain to the linguistic centers. The act of naming creates distance. It moves you from being the experience to observing the experience. Think about the difference between these two statements. I'm anxious. I notice anxiety is present. The first is identification. You are the anxiety. It defines your entire experience in that moment. The second is observation. There's you, and there's anxiety. Two separate things. You're aware of anxiety without being consumed by it. This linguistic shift mirrors an internal shift. And when you practice it repeatedly, you train your mind to maintain this observational distance. So when negativity arises, name it, gently, without judgment. This is fear. This is the worry pattern. This is self-doubt talking. This is the comparison mind. The naming doesn't have to be precise or clinical. It just needs to identify what's present, to make the invisible visible through language. And something remarkable happens when you do this. The thought loses some of its charge. Its intensity decreases. Its believability diminishes because you've changed your relationship to it. You've moved from unconscious reaction to conscious observation. Naming dissolves identification. This is a profound statement worth exploring deeply, because identification is the mechanism through which thoughts control you. When you're identified with a thought, you can't see it clearly. You're too close. You are it. There's no space between you and the thought. It's like trying to see your own face without a mirror. Impossible. You need distance to see clearly. Naming creates that distance, that mirror, that space from which observation becomes possible. And in that space, identification naturally dissolves, not through effort or force, but through the simple act of clear seeing. You see the thought. You recognize it's a thought. And suddenly, you're not entangled with it anymore. This is why naming is so powerful. It's not just a psychological trick. It's a practice that directly addresses the root mechanism of mental suffering, identification with thought. Let's practice this together right now. Bring to mind something that's been bothering you. Some situation or concern that's been generating negative thoughts. Notice the thoughts that arise around this situation. Don't judge them. Don't try to change them. Just notice what thoughts appear. Now name what you're experiencing. Use simple, clear labels. This is worry about the future. This is fear of rejection. This is replaying past mistakes. This is imagining worst-case scenarios. Notice what happens when you name these thoughts. Do they feel different? Lighter, less solid? For most people, naming creates an immediate sense of relief, not because the situation has changed, but because the relationship to the thoughts has changed. The thoughts are still there, but you're not lost in them. You're seeing them, and that makes all the difference. This practice of recognition and naming needs to become habitual, a reflex, something you do automatically throughout the day. At first, you'll catch thoughts long after they've taken hold. You'll realize hours later that you've been in a negative thought spiral all morning. That's normal. That's part of the learning process. Don't judge yourself for it. Just notice, oh, I was caught in negative thinking. Now I see it. With practice, you'll catch thoughts sooner, minutes after they start instead of hours, then moments after, then right as they arise. This progressive quickening of recognition is the development of mastery. Each time you catch a thought a little earlier, you're strengthening the neural pathways of awareness. You're training your brain to maintain that witnessing presence more consistently, to notice the arising of thoughts before they gain momentum. This training is like any other skill development. Awkward and difficult at first, gradually becoming smoother, eventually becoming natural, effortless, automatic. But it requires patience, repetition, gentle persistence. Let's talk about what happens in the moment of recognition. Because this moment holds tremendous power, when you recognize a negative thought, when you see it clearly and name it, you create what's called a state change. Your nervous system shifts. The emotional charge decreases. Stress hormones begin to decrease. The prefrontal cortex comes back online. You move from reactive mode to responsive mode, from automatic to conscious, from victim to observer. This state change is physical, not just mental. You can feel it. A softening, a loosening, a sense of space opening up. And in that space, choice becomes possible. You can decide how to respond rather than being carried away by automatic patterns. This is why recognition is so powerful. It's not just intellectual understanding. It's a tangible shift in your internal state that creates practical freedom. But here's what's important. Recognition alone is often enough. You don't always need to do something about the thought. Many people make the mistake of thinking they need to fix every negative thought. Challenge it. Replace it with a positive thought. Analyze why they're having it. But all of that is engagement. It's giving energy to the thought, making it more solid and real. Sometimes recognition is sufficient. You see the thought, you name it, and then you let it be. You return your attention to what you're actually doing. The thought might still be there in the background, but it's not controlling you. It's not dictating your emotional state or your behavior. It's just there, like background noise, noticed but not engaging. This is a subtle but crucial skill. The ability to let thoughts be present without needing to do anything about them, not suppressing them, not fighting them, not indulging them, just allowing them to be there while you maintain your center, your presence, your awareness. Think of it like this. You're in a room having a conversation with someone important. There's also a radio playing in the background. You can hear the radio. You're aware it's there, but you're not giving it your full attention. You're focused on the conversation that matters. The radio doesn't have to be turned off for you to have a meaningful conversation. It just needs to stay in the background. Your negative thoughts are like that radio. They're present. You can hear them, but you don't have to give them your full attention. You can let them play in the background while you focus on what actually matters. The present moment, the task at hand, the person in front of you. This capacity to let thoughts exist without engagement is advanced mastery, and it develops through the practice of recognition. The more you practice recognizing thoughts without immediately trying to fix or change them, the more comfortable you become with the presence of mental activity that you don't particularly like. You develop equanimity, the ability to be okay with things not being okay, to remain centered even when your mental weather is turbulent. This equanimity is freedom. Not freedom from negative thoughts, but freedom in relation to them. Now let's explore some of the obstacles that arise in the practice of recognition. The first obstacle is judgment. When you start noticing your negative thoughts, you might be appalled by what you find. I can't believe I think such terrible things. I'm so negative. I should be more positive. But this judgment is just more negative thinking. You're judging yourself for having negative thoughts. You're creating a second layer of suffering on top of the first. The practice of recognition requires non-judgment, neutral observation, seeing what's there without making it mean something about you. Your thoughts are not you. They're not evidence of your character or worth. They're just mental activity, neural patterns firing, the weather of the mind. When you can see them this way, as impersonal phenomena rather than personal failings, judgment naturally falls away. And without judgment, recognition becomes much easier. You can look at your mental activity honestly because you're not making yourself wrong for what you find there. The second obstacle is the belief that recognition should immediately change things. You recognize a negative thought and expect it to disappear. When it doesn't, you feel frustrated. This isn't working. I'm still having the thought. But recognition doesn't make thoughts disappear. At least not immediately. What it does is change your relationship to them. The thought is still there, but you're not identified with it. You're not controlled by it. You're observing it rather than being it. This is the change, and it's significant, even if it doesn't feel dramatic. Over time, with consistent recognition, thoughts do begin to have less power. They arise less frequently. They pass more quickly. Their emotional charge decreases. But this is a gradual process. It requires patience and trust in the practice. The third obstacle is inconsistency. You practice recognition for a few days, notice some benefit, and then forget about it. The old patterns reassert themselves. You go back to being unconsciously identified with thoughts, and you wonder why nothing has changed. But mastery requires consistent practice, not perfect practice. You'll forget, you'll get caught in thoughts, you'll lose awareness. That's normal. What matters is returning to the practice, again and again, day after day. Each time you return, you strengthen the pathways of awareness. Each time you recognize a thought after being lost in it, you're building the skill. This is how change happens. Not through one perfect session, but through thousands of imperfect attempts, each one building on the last. Let's practice recognition in different contexts, because thoughts show up differently in different situations. In the morning, you might notice planning thoughts. I have so much to do today. I'll never get it all done. Recognition. This is the overwhelm pattern. In social situations, you might notice comparison thoughts. They're so much more successful than me. Recognition. This is the comparison mind. Before sleep, you might notice worry thoughts. What if that thing I said was wrong? Recognition. This is the rumination pattern. Each context has its typical thought patterns. And as you practice recognition across different situations, you begin to see these patterns clearly. You realize, oh, I always have this thought in this situation. It's predictable. It's automatic. It's not even responding to current reality, it's just a habit. This realization is liberating. Because once you see that thoughts are habits rather than truths, they lose their power to convince you. A habit can be observed, understood, gradually changed. But a truth must be believed and obeyed. When your negative thoughts shift from being perceived as truths to being recognized as habits, everything changes. Now let's explore the practice of recognition at a deeper level, recognizing the space between thoughts. Most people are so focused on thought content that they never notice the gaps, the brief moments of silence between one thought and the next. But these gaps are crucial. They're portals to deeper awareness, windows into the spacious consciousness that underlies all mental activity. When you start practicing recognition, you begin to notice these gaps. At first, they're fleeting. A brief moment of silence before the next thought arises, but with practice, the gaps widen. You rest in them longer, and you discover something profound. The silence is more you than the thoughts are. The awareness that's present in the gaps, that's your true nature. Thoughts come and go, but awareness remains. Constant, unchanging, peaceful. Recognizing thoughts is important, but recognizing the space between thoughts is transformative. Because in that space, there's no problem. No negativity, no suffering, just pure awareness, just being. So as you practice recognition, pay attention not just to the thoughts, but to the gaps, the moments of silence, the space that holds all thoughts. Rest there when you can. Let yourself sink into that silence. Feel the peace that's always present beneath the noise. This is the deepest level of recognition. Seeing not just thoughts, but seeing what's aware of thoughts. Recognizing the consciousness that underlies all mental activity. Let's also address what to do when you recognize a thought that's pointing to something important. Not all negative thoughts are just noise. Sometimes they're signaling something that needs attention. I'm not prepared for this presentation. Might be true and might require action. This relationship doesn't feel right anymore. Might be valid intuition worth exploring. I'm exhausted and need rest. Might be important self-care information. Recognition helps you distinguish between thoughts that need attention and thoughts that are just mental noise. When you recognize a thought clearly, without identification you can assess it more accurately. Is this thought pointing to something that needs action, or is it just creating needless suffering? Is this legitimate concern or catastrophizing? Is this intuition or fear? From the space of recognition, these distinctions become clearer. You can respond appropriately rather than reacting automatically. If the thought points to something real, you can take action. If it's just noise, you can let it pass. This discernment is one of the fruits of recognition practice. Not just seeing thoughts, but seeing them clearly enough to know what they mean and what they require. Recognition is also the foundation for all other practices. You can't work with what you can't see. Every technique, every method, every approach to mastering thought begins with recognition, with seeing what's actually happening in your mind. Without recognition, you're fighting blind. You're trying to change patterns you can't identify. You're reacting to thoughts you don't even realize you're having. But with recognition, everything becomes possible. You can see patterns. You can identify triggers. You can sense thoughts before they fully form. You can choose your response. You can redirect attention. You can rest in awareness. All of this flows from the simple practice of recognition, of seeing the invisible, of bringing the unconscious into consciousness. This is why we spend so much time on this foundation. Because everything else builds on it. Master recognition and you're halfway to mastering thought. Because once you can see clearly, the rest follows naturally. So commit to this practice. Make it your priority, not just for a few days, but as an ongoing discipline. Throughout your day, maintain gentle awareness of your mental state. Notice when negativity appears. Name it without judgment. Observe the gaps between thoughts. Rest in the awareness that's always present. Do this today, tomorrow, every day, and watch as the invisible becomes visible, as the unconscious becomes conscious, as the automatic becomes chosen. This is the power of recognition. This is the path to mastery. Simple, profound, transformative. The invisible becomes visible, and once seen clearly, everything changes. Chapter 3, Pattern Awareness. Your negative thinking isn't random. It follows patterns. This is one of the most liberating discoveries you can make about your mind. Because if negative thinking were truly random, appearing without cause or pattern, you'd be helpless against it. But it's not random. It's predictable, and what's predictable can be understood. What can be understood can be worked with. What can be worked with can be transformed. Your mind has developed habitual pathways, neural grooves worn deep through repetition, automatic sequences that trigger without your conscious participation. These are your thought patterns, and becoming aware of them is the next level of mastery. Because once you see the pattern, you're no longer at its mercy. You can anticipate it, prepare for it, interrupt it before it gains momentum. You may find that your mind attacks in specific situations in the morning, before sleep, during stress, or after social comparison. Let's explore each of these common pattern triggers, because recognizing your personal triggers is how you stop being a victim of automatic thinking. Morning patterns are particularly common. You wake up and within moments, negative thoughts flood in. Worries about the day ahead, anxiety about tasks undone, dread about situations you must face. The mind, emerging from sleep, immediately scans for threats, for problems, for reasons to activate the stress response. This isn't personal. It's how the brain works. After hours of rest, it comes online by checking for danger. This was useful for survival, less useful for modern peace of mind. But recognizing this pattern changes your mornings. Instead of believing every thought that arises, you recognize, oh, this is the morning anxiety pattern. It happens every day. It's not telling me truth about my day. It's just my brain's waking up routine. This recognition creates space. You can observe the pattern without being swept into it. You can meet it with breath, with awareness, with conscious redirection of attention. You might establish a morning practice that interrupts the pattern. Meditation, gratitude, gentle movement, whatever helps you establish a different neural pathway for starting your day. Before sleep, patterns show up differently. The mind, given space without external stimulation, often fills that space with rumination. Replaying the day's conversations, analyzing interactions for signs of failure or judgment, worrying about tomorrow, planning obsessively. The thoughts spiral, making sleep difficult, creating anxiety that carries into rest. Recognizing this nighttime pattern allows you to prepare for it, to establish evening routines that calm the mind rather than activating it. Perhaps you stop screen time an hour before bed. Perhaps you practice gentle awareness, noticing thoughts without engaging them. Perhaps you read or listen to calming guidance, or write concerns down to be addressed tomorrow. Whatever the specific practice, the key is recognizing the pattern and meeting it with intention rather than being surprised by it night after night. During stress, negative thought patterns intensify. When you're overwhelmed, under pressure, or facing challenges, the mind's protective mechanisms go into overdrive. Everything feels threatening. Every possibility looks like disaster. Every choice seems fraught with danger. This amplification of negativity during stress is normal, expected. Your nervous system is activated, and the thinking mind reflects that activation. But recognizing the pattern helps you contextualize it. I'm stressed right now, which means my thinking will be more negative than usual. This doesn't mean my thoughts are more true. It means my nervous system is activated. This knowing prevents you from making major decisions or taking your thoughts too seriously during high-stress periods. You understand that your mental weather is temporarily cloudy, and you wait for clearer skies before trusting your judgment completely. After social comparison, many people experience a surge of negative self-talk. You scroll through social media, attend a gathering, hear about someone's achievements, and suddenly feel inadequate. They're so much better than me. I'm behind where I should be. I'll never achieve what they have. These thoughts arise automatically, triggered by the ancient human tendency to assess our place in the social hierarchy. But recognizing this pattern allows you to interrupt it. When you notice comparison thoughts arising, you can name them. This is the comparison mind. It shows up when I see others' success. It's not telling me truth. It's an automatic response. You can choose to step away from comparison situations when you're vulnerable. You can remind yourself that you're seeing others' highlight reels, not their full reality. You can redirect attention to your own path, your own growth, your own values. The pattern loses power when it's recognized. It becomes just another predictable response rather than a true assessment of your worth. Identify your personal triggers. Awareness is how you stop being a victim of automatic thinking. This requires honest self-observation, a willingness to look at when and where your negative patterns emerge. Keep a simple journal for a week. Note when negative thinking appears and what preceded it. Was it a particular time of day? A specific situation? Certain people? Particular activities? Physical states like hunger, tiredness, or pain. Patterns will emerge. You'll see that your negative thinking isn't constant. It has triggers. Predictable situations that activate familiar thought sequences. This information is gold, because once you know your triggers, you can prepare for them. You can't always avoid triggers. Life will present challenging situations, stressful circumstances, comparison opportunities. But you can meet them with awareness instead of automatic reaction. You can recognize this is a trigger situation for me. My mind will likely produce negative thoughts. I'm prepared for that. I won't believe them automatically. This preparation is like emotional aikido. You're not fighting the pattern. You're recognizing it, expecting it, and meeting it with centered awareness rather than reactive identification. Let's go deeper into specific common patterns, because naming and understanding them increases your power over them. The catastrophizing pattern takes a small concern and amplifies it into disaster. One mistake becomes total failure. A slight worry becomes worst-case scenario. A minor problem becomes unsolvable crisis. This pattern often shows up around uncertainty. When you don't know how something will turn out, your mind fills the unknown with imagined catastrophe. Recognizing this pattern sounds like, "Oh, I'm catastrophizing." This is what my mind does with uncertainty. It's creating disaster scenarios, not predicting the future. The perfectionism pattern creates impossible standards and then attacks you for not meeting them. Nothing you do is good enough. Every achievement is discounted. Every effort falls short. This pattern often develops from early experiences of conditional love or high criticism. The mind learned to be harshly self-critical as a way to avoid external criticism. Recognizing this pattern sounds like, this is the perfectionism voice. It's never satisfied. It's trying to protect me by pushing me harder, but it's actually just creating suffering. The mind-reading pattern assumes you know what others think. usually assuming they're thinking negatively about you. They think I'm incompetent. She didn't like me. He's judging me. This pattern creates suffering around imagined judgments that may have no basis in reality. You're responding to thoughts you've attributed to others, not to anything they've actually said or done. Recognizing this pattern sounds like, I'm mind reading again. I actually have no idea what they're thinking. I'm projecting my own insecurities onto them. The fortune-telling pattern predicts negative futures as if they're certain. This will definitely fail. I'll never find love. My life will always be this hard. This pattern takes possibilities and treats them as foregone conclusions. It closes down hope and creates learned helplessness. Recognizing this pattern sounds like, I'm predicting the future negatively, but I don't actually know what will happen. This is just fear talking. The all-or-nothing pattern sees everything in extremes. Total success or complete failure. Perfect or worthless. Always or never. This black and white thinking eliminates nuance, context, and the reality that most of life exists in shades of gray. Recognizing this pattern sounds like, I'm thinking in extremes. Reality is more nuanced than this. Things can be partially successful, works in progress, good enough. The personalization pattern takes external events and makes them about you. Someone is in a bad mood and it must be your fault. A plan falls through. You must have done something wrong. Something doesn't work out. It must be because you're inadequate. This pattern creates false responsibility for things outside your control and generates needless guilt and shame. Recognizing this pattern sounds like, I'm personalizing. Not everything is about me. Other people have their own internal experiences that have nothing to do with my worth. Do you recognize yourself in these patterns? Most people have a few that show up repeatedly. Identifying your primary patterns is illuminating. You start to see, oh, this is just my catastrophizing pattern again. This is familiar. I've been here 1,000 times. And that familiarity itself creates distance. Because when something is recognized as a pattern, it becomes less believable, less solid, less true. It's like watching the same movie over and over. Eventually, you see the plot coming. You know the ending. And you stop being surprised or convinced by it. Your thought patterns are the same. Once you've seen them enough times, they lose their power to convince you. They become, oh, this again, rather than, this is real and true and I must believe it. Let's practice pattern recognition together. Think about the last time you experienced strong negative thinking. What pattern was it? Were you catastrophizing, predicting negative futures, mind reading, judging yourself for not being perfect? Name the pattern. Recognize it as a familiar sequence rather than a unique truth. Now think back further. When else have you had this same pattern? Can you remember other times this familiar thought sequence appeared? What you're doing is connecting individual instances into a recognizable pattern. You're seeing that this isn't new information. It's an old recording playing again. This recognition diminishes the pattern's power, because new information demands attention, but old patterns, once recognized, can be observed without engagement. Now let's explore how patterns reinforce themselves and how awareness interrupts this reinforcement. Patterns strengthen through repetition. Every time you believe and react to a thought pattern, you're strengthening that neural pathway, making it more automatic, more likely to fire again. This is why some patterns feel so deeply ingrained. They've been repeated thousands of times. They've carved deep grooves in your neural landscape. But here's what's remarkable about neuroplasticity. Pathways can change. Grooves can be redirected. Patterns can be weakened through disuse, and new patterns can be strengthened through practice. Every time you recognize a pattern without believing it, you're weakening that pathway. You're interrupting the automatic sequence. Every time you notice the pattern and choose a different response, you're creating a new pathway, a new option, a new possibility. This doesn't happen instantly. Neural change takes time, but it happens, inevitably. If you persist in recognizing patterns without feeding them, the pattern fires. I'm going to fail. Old response, believe it. Feel anxious, maybe avoid the challenge entirely. Strengthens pattern. New response. This is the catastrophizing pattern. I've seen it before. It's not predicting the future and it's just an automatic thought. Weakens pattern. The difference seems small, but repeated thousands of times, It's the difference between being controlled by patterns and being free from them. Let's talk about pattern awareness in real time, because recognizing patterns after the fact is useful, but recognizing them as they're happening is mastery. This requires developed metacognitive awareness, the ability to observe your thinking process even while you're engaged in it. It's like watching yourself in a mirror while you move. You're both the mover and the observer of movement. At first, this feels strange, artificial, like you're splitting your attention in ways that aren't natural. But with practice, it becomes fluid, natural. You can be fully engaged in life while maintaining a gentle background awareness of your mental patterns. You're in a conversation and you notice, I'm mind reading. I just assumed they're judging me. But they haven't actually said anything critical. You're working on a project and you notice, now this is perfectionism. I'm making this harder than it needs to be. Good enough is actually good enough. You're planning your day and you notice I'm catastrophizing about everything that could go wrong. But most of what I'm worried about probably won't happen. This real-time pattern recognition allows you to adjust course immediately. You don't have to wait until the pattern has run its full course. You catch it early and redirect. This is advanced practice. It requires significant awareness, but it's incredibly powerful when developed. Now let's address what to do when patterns feel overwhelming. When you recognize the pattern but feel unable to interrupt it. This happens. Patterns can have tremendous momentum, especially when they're connected to deep wounds or strong emotions. You recognize, this is just my unworthiness pattern, but you still feel worthless. The recognition doesn't immediately dissolve the feeling. This is normal. This doesn't mean you're doing it wrong or that the practice isn't working. What you're experiencing is the lag between cognitive recognition and emotional resolution. Your thinking mind sees the pattern, but your emotional system is still responding to it. In these moments, be patient, be gentle. The recognition is still valuable even if it doesn't immediately change how you feel. Keep recognizing the pattern without judgment. Yes, this feeling is here. Yes, this thought is here. I see them. I recognize the pattern, and I don't have to believe it even though I'm feeling it. This is holding two realities simultaneously. The pattern is present, and the pattern isn't truth. You're feeling something, and the feeling isn't who you are. Over time, with repeated recognition, the emotional charge of patterns decreases. The lag between recognition and relief gets shorter, but even when the lag is long, recognition is still breaking the pattern's hold on you. You're just not yet seeing the results of that breaking. Trust the process. Trust that awareness applied consistently over time transforms even the deepest patterns. Let's explore the relationship between patterns and core beliefs, because patterns often arise from underlying beliefs about yourself, others, or the world. The catastrophizing pattern might arise from a core belief that the world is dangerous. The perfectionism pattern might arise from I'm only worthy if I'm perfect. The mind reading pattern might arise from people are judging me. These core beliefs operate beneath conscious awareness, generating thought patterns that reinforce them. Recognizing the patterns can lead you to discover the beliefs. You notice you're always catastrophizing and you ask, what belief creates this pattern? You might discover, I believe I can't handle difficulty, so my mind tries to prepare me for the worst to protect me from being overwhelmed. This discovery is profound, because once you see the belief, you can question it, test it, realize it's not actually true. Can I handle difficulty? Actually, yes. I've handled every difficult thing that's come my way so far. The belief that I can't is outdated. When the underlying belief is questioned and seen as false, the patterns that arose from it begin to dissolve naturally. This is deeper work. It goes beyond just recognizing patterns to understanding their source and dismantling the beliefs that fuel them. Pattern awareness also helps you see how patterns interact, how one pattern triggers another and cascades. You make a small mistake, trigger. Perfectionism pattern activates, I should have done better, which triggers the catastrophizing pattern. This proves I'll never be good enough, which triggers the fortune-telling pattern. I'm going to fail at everything. Each pattern feeds into the next, creating spirals that can feel overwhelming. But when you recognize this cascade, you can interrupt it at any point. You don't have to stop the first thought to prevent the cascade. You can catch it at the second or third link in the chain. Wait, I'm cascading. Mistake, perfectionism, catastrophizing. I've seen this sequence before. It's not truth. It's just one pattern triggering another. I can step out of this cascade right now. This interruption prevents the full spiral. You've broken the automatic sequence, and each time you do this, the cascade becomes less likely to occur in the future. Finally, let's talk about celebrating recognition, because every time you recognize a pattern, that's a victory. You're not failing when you notice negative thinking. You're succeeding. You're aware. You're conscious. You're breaking the pattern's automatic hold. Don't make the mistake of judging yourself for having patterns. Everyone has them. They're part of having a human brain with a human history. The question isn't whether you have patterns, it's whether you recognize them, whether you're conscious of them, whether you're actively working to not be controlled by them. And if you're reading this, if you're practicing this, you're doing that work. You're recognizing. You're aware. You're transforming. That deserves celebration, not self-criticism. That deserves acknowledgement, not judgment. So when you catch a pattern, try adding, "Good, I saw it. I'm aware. This is progress." This positive reinforcement supports the practice. It makes recognition something you're motivated to do, rather than something that creates more self-judgment. Pattern awareness is the bridge between simple recognition and predictive mastery. You're learning not just to see thoughts, but to see the structures that generate them. And once you see the structures, you can work with them, interrupt them, transform them. Your negative thinking isn't random. It's patterned. And what's patterned can be seen. What's seen can be understood. What's understood can be changed. This is your power. This is your path forward. See the patterns, name them. Recognize them as familiar rather than true. And watch as their power over you diminishes, thought by thought, pattern by pattern, day by day. You're not eliminating negative thinking entirely. You're learning to recognize its patterns so you're no longer at their mercy. And that recognition is freedom, not perfection, not elimination, but freedom. Freedom to see clearly, to choose consciously, to live awake rather than lost in automatic patterns. This is mastery. And it's developing in you right now, through every moment of pattern recognition. Keep practicing, keep recognizing, keep seeing. The patterns that have controlled you are becoming visible, and once visible, they can no longer control you in the same way. This is the power of pattern awareness. This is your path to freedom. Chapter 4. Predictive recognition. The highest level of mastery is sensing negative thoughts before they even form. This sounds almost mystical. How can you sense something that hasn't yet appeared? How can you recognize a thought before it becomes a thought? But this isn't mysticism. It's awareness refined to its highest degree. It's the culmination of all the practice you've been doing. Recognition and pattern awareness deepen to the point where you sense the stirrings of thought before they crystallize into form. Just as you can feel a storm coming, you can sense mental tension building. Think about how you know a storm is approaching. The air changes. Pressure shifts. There's a quality to the atmosphere that signals what's coming before the first drops fall. Your mind works the same way. Before a negative thought fully forms, there are subtle shifts, tensions, changes in the quality of your awareness. Your body tightens slightly. Your breath becomes shallow. Your attention narrows. A vague unease appears. Nothing specific yet, just a sense that negativity is gathering. These are the early warning signs, the pre-thought signals, and learning to recognize them is the key to preventing negative spirals before they begin. When you detect that early shift, pause, breathe deeply, redirect your focus. You've just prevented a storm before it began. Let's explore what these early warning signs actually feel like, because learning to sense them requires refined attention. For most people, negative thinking doesn't appear suddenly. It builds. There's a progression from peace to agitation, from clarity to confusion, from presence to preoccupation. But this progression is so rapid, so habitual, that it seems instantaneous. One moment you're fine, the next you're caught in negative spirals. But slow down the process through careful observation, and you'll see. There were signs, signals, moments when intervention was still possible. Perhaps you notice your posture changing. You were sitting upright and open, and gradually you notice yourself hunching, contracting, protecting. Perhaps you notice your breathing shifting. It was deep and relaxed, and now it's shallow and held as if you're bracing for something. Perhaps you notice your jaw tightening, your shoulders rising, your stomach clenching. These physical tensions often precede conscious thought. Your body knows before your mind knows. Your nervous system detects threat before your thinking brain formulates thoughts about threat. This is the window of opportunity. When your body signals something is shifting, but thoughts haven't yet crystallized. In this window, intervention is remarkably effective, because you're not fighting against established thought patterns. You're catching the wave as it's forming before it gains momentum. The practice of sensing these early shifts requires developing what might be called somatic awareness, body consciousness. The ability to feel what's happening in your physical being moment to moment. Most people are so identified with mental activity that they're disconnected from bodily experience. They live in their heads unaware of the constant stream of physical information their bodies provide. But your body is always communicating, always signaling your internal state. You just have to learn its language. Start by establishing a baseline. What does your body feel like when you're calm, centered, at ease? Notice your breath rhythm, your muscle tone, your posture, the quality of sensation throughout your body. This calm baseline becomes your reference point, and when you drift away from it, you notice something has shifted. I'm no longer at baseline. What's happening? This noticing creates the opportunity for early intervention. Before thoughts have formed, before patterns have activated, you've already detected the shift toward negativity. And in that detection, you can respond. Consciously, skillfully, preventing the cascade before it begins. Let's practice this together right now. Close your eyes if you're able, or soften your gaze. Bring attention to your body. Start with your breath. Notice the rhythm, the depth, the ease or restriction. Don't change anything yet, just observe. Now scan through your body, face, jaw, neck, shoulders, chest, belly, hips, legs, feet. Where do you notice tension? Holding, tightness? Again, no need to change anything. Just notice this is your current state, your present baseline. If negativity were to begin building, this baseline would shift. Tension would increase. Breath would become more shallow. Body would contract. And if you maintain this level of awareness throughout your day, you'll catch those shifts early, before they become overwhelming, before thoughts take over. This is the practice of predictive recognition. Not trying to predict specific thoughts, but sensing the conditions that precede negative thinking. Now let's explore the mental qualities that signal approaching negativity. Just as your body tenses before negative thinking fully manifests, your mental state shifts. Attention becomes less spacious, more narrow. Awareness feels contracted rather than open. When you're present and at ease, your awareness has quality of spaciousness. You're aware of thoughts, but also of silence between thoughts, aware of your environment, aware of awareness itself. But as negativity begins to build, this spaciousness contracts. Awareness narrows. You lose peripheral vision both literally and metaphorically. Focus becomes tight, rigid, forced. Noticing this shift, from spacious to contracted awareness, is another early warning sign. When you detect it, you can consciously re-establish spaciousness. Widen your attention. Notice sounds around you. Feel the space you're in. Recognize thoughts as objects in awareness rather than the totality of awareness. This deliberate widening of attention interrupts the narrowing that precedes negative spirals. You're catching the pattern at its earliest stage and redirecting before it develops. Another mental quality that shifts is your relationship to time. When you're present, you're here now. But as negativity builds, you drift into past or future. You start replaying past events, analyzing previous conversations, ruminating on mistakes, or you start projecting into future, worrying about outcomes, imagining problems, planning obsessively. The present moment becomes intolerable. Your mind seeks escape into then or when, and this temporal drift is often the first sign that negative patterns are activating. When you notice yourself leaving the present moment, you can gently return. I'm thinking about the past, but I'm here now. I'm thinking about the future, but I'm here now. This returning to presence interrupts the temporal drift that fuels negative thinking. You're refusing to follow the mind into its habitual escapes. Let's also explore energetic shifts. This might sound subtle, but with practice, it becomes one of the most reliable early warning signs. When you're at ease, your energy feels light, open, flowing. There's a quality of aliveness, of vitality, that pervades your being. But as negativity begins to build, energy becomes heavy, dense, stagnant. It's as if a cloud has settled over your awareness. This shift in energetic quality happens before specific thoughts arise. You just feel heavier, more burdened, as if you're carrying weight you weren't carrying moments before. Recognizing this heaviness is recognizing negativity before it's fully manifested. And in that recognition, you can choose to shift your energy through movement, through breath, through changing your physical state or your environment, through consciously choosing to attend to something that lifts rather than weighs you down. This energetic awareness might seem abstract until you experience it directly. But pay attention for a few days to how your energy feels in different states, and you'll begin to recognize the shifts clearly. Now let's talk about situational predictability. Because certain situations reliably precede negative thinking, and recognizing these situations allows you to prepare. You know you tend to spiral into negative thinking after scrolling social media. So you can predict, if I scroll now, negativity will likely follow. This prediction gives you choice. You can scroll mindfully, maintaining awareness that comparison thoughts will arise, or you can choose not to scroll, recognizing you're in a vulnerable state. You know you tend to experience anxiety on Sunday evenings as you anticipate the week ahead. So Sunday evening is predictable trigger time. Instead of being surprised by anxiety every Sunday, you can prepare for it. Establish Sunday evening practices that support rather than activate you. Recognize the thoughts that arise as predictable patterns rather than accurate assessments. You know you tend to be self-critical after making mistakes. So when you make a mistake, you can predict the self-criticism pattern will likely activate now. This prediction allows you to meet the self-criticism with awareness rather than identification. Here it comes. Right on schedule. Hello, familiar pattern. I see you, but I'm not going to believe everything you say. Situational predictability is powerful because it removes the element of surprise. You're prepared, aware, ready to meet the pattern with consciousness rather than unconscious reaction. Take a moment to identify your predictable trigger situations. When does negative thinking most reliably appear for you? Certain times of day? Certain environments? After certain types of interactions? During certain activities? In certain physical states? Write these down if you can. Make them explicit. Because explicit knowledge gives you power over what was previously unconscious. Now let's explore the practice of creating space. Chapter 4. Predictive Recognition. The highest level of mastery is sensing negative thoughts before they even form. This sounds almost mystical. How can you sense something that hasn't yet appeared? How can you recognize a thought before it becomes a thought? But this isn't mysticism. It's awareness refined to its highest degree. It's the culmination of all the practice you've been doing. Recognition and pattern awareness deepen to the point where you sense the stirrings of thought before they crystallize into form. Just as you can feel a storm coming, you can sense mental tension building. Think about how you know a storm is approaching. The air changes. Pressure shifts. There's a quality to the atmosphere that signals what's coming before the first drops fall. Your mind works the same way. Before a negative thought fully forms, there are subtle shifts, tensions, changes in the quality of your awareness. Your body tightens slightly. Your breath becomes shallow. Your attention narrows. A vague unease appears, nothing specific yet, just a sense that negativity is gathering. These are the early warning signs, the pre-thought signals, and learning to recognize them is the key to preventing negative spirals before they begin. When you detect that early shift, pause, breathe deeply, redirect your focus. You've just prevented a storm before it began. Let's explore what these early warning signs actually feel like, because learning to sense them requires refined attention. For most people, negative thinking doesn't appear suddenly, it builds. There's a progression from peace to agitation, from clarity to confusion, from presence to preoccupation. But this progression is so rapid, so habitual, that it seems instantaneous. One moment you're fine, the next you're caught in negative spirals. But slow down the process through careful observation, and you'll see. There were signs, signals, moments when intervention was still possible. Perhaps you notice your posture changing. You were sitting upright and open, and gradually you notice yourself hunching, contracting, protecting. Perhaps you notice your breathing shifting. It was deep and relaxed, and now it's shallow and held as if you're bracing for something. Perhaps you notice your jaw tightening, your shoulders rising, your stomach clenching. These physical tensions often precede conscious thought. Your body knows before your mind knows. Your nervous system detects threat before your thinking brain formulates thoughts about threat. This is the window of opportunity, when your body signals something is shifting, but thoughts haven't yet crystallized. In this window, intervention is remarkably effective, because you're not fighting against established thought patterns. You're catching the wave as it's forming before it gains momentum. The practice of sensing these early shifts requires developing what might be called somatic awareness, body consciousness, the ability to feel what's happening in your physical being moment to moment. Most people are so identified with mental activity that they're disconnected from bodily experience. They live in their heads unaware of the constant stream of physical information their bodies provide. But your body is always communicating, always signaling your internal state. You just have to learn its language. Start by establishing a baseline. What does your body feel like when you're calm, centered, at ease? Notice your breath rhythm, your muscle tone, your posture, the quality of sensation throughout your body. This calm baseline becomes your reference point, and when you drift away from it, you notice something has shifted. I'm no longer at baseline. What's happening? This noticing creates the opportunity for early intervention. Before thoughts have formed, before patterns have activated, you've already detected the shift toward negativity, and in that detection, you can respond consciously, skillfully, preventing the cascade before it begins. Let's practice this together right now. Close your eyes if you're able, or soften your gaze. Bring attention to your body. Start with your breath. Notice the rhythm, the depth, the ease or restriction. Don't change anything yet, just observe. Now scan through your body, face, jaw, neck, shoulders, chest, belly, hips, legs, feet. Where do you notice tension? Holding, tightness? Again, no need to change anything. Just notice. This is your current state, your present baseline. If negativity were to begin building, this baseline would shift. Tension would increase. Breath would become more shallow. Body would contract. And if you maintain this level of awareness throughout your day, you'll catch those shifts early, before they become overwhelming, before thoughts take over. This is the practice of predictive recognition. Not trying to predict specific thoughts, but sensing the conditions that precede negative thinking. Now let's explore the mental qualities that signal approaching negativity. Just as your body tenses before negative thinking fully manifests, your mental state shifts. Attention becomes less spacious, more narrow. Awareness feels contracted rather than open. When you're present and at ease, your awareness has quality of spaciousness. You're aware of thoughts, but also of silence between thoughts. Aware of your environment. Aware of awareness itself. But as negativity begins to build, this spaciousness contracts. Awareness narrows. You lose peripheral vision, both literally and metaphorically. Focus becomes tight, rigid, forced. Noticing this shift, from spacious to contracted awareness, is another early warning sign. When you detect it, you can consciously re-establish spaciousness. Widen your attention. Notice sounds around you. Feel the space you're in. Recognize thoughts as objects in awareness rather than the totality of awareness. This deliberate widening of attention interrupts the narrowing that precedes negative spirals. You're catching the pattern at its earliest stage and redirecting before it develops. Another mental quality that shifts is your relationship to time. When you're present, you're here now. But as negativity builds, you drift into past or future. You start replaying past events, analyzing previous conversations, ruminating on mistakes, or you start projecting into future, worrying about outcomes, imagining problems, planning obsessively. The present moment becomes intolerable. Your mind seeks escape into then or when, and this temporal drift is often the first sign that negative patterns are activating. When you notice yourself leaving the present moment, you can gently return. I'm thinking about the past, but I'm here now. I'm thinking about the future, but I'm here now. This returning to presence interrupts the temporal drift that fuels negative thinking. You're refusing to follow the mind into its habitual escapes. Let's also explore energetic shifts. This might sound subtle, but with practice, it becomes one of the most reliable early warning signs. When you're at ease, your energy feels light, open, flowing. There's a quality of aliveness, of vitality that pervades your being. But as negativity begins to build, energy becomes heavy, dense, stagnant. It's as if a cloud has settled over your awareness. This shift in energetic quality happens before specific thoughts arise. You just feel heavier, more burdened, as if you're carrying weight you weren't carrying moments before. Recognizing this heaviness is recognizing negativity before it's fully manifested, and in that recognition, you can choose to shift your energy through movement, through breath, through changing your physical state or your environment, through consciously choosing to attend to something that lifts rather than weighs you down. This energetic awareness might seem abstract until you experience it directly, but pay attention for a few days to how your energy feels in different states, and you'll begin to recognize the shifts clearly. Now let's talk about situational predictability, because certain situations reliably precede negative thinking, and recognizing these situations allows you to prepare. You know you tend to spiral into negative thinking after scrolling social media. So you can predict, if I scroll now, negativity will likely follow. This prediction gives you choice. You can scroll mindfully, maintaining awareness that comparison thoughts will arise, or you can choose not to scroll, recognizing you're in a vulnerable state. You know you tend to experience anxiety on Sunday evenings as you anticipate the week ahead. So Sunday evening is predictable trigger time. Instead of being surprised by anxiety every Sunday, you can prepare for it. Establish Sunday evening practices that support rather than activate you. Recognize the thoughts that arise as predictable patterns rather than accurate assessments. You know you tend to be self-critical after making mistakes. So when you make a mistake, you can predict, the self-criticism pattern will likely activate now. This prediction allows you to meet the self-criticism with awareness rather than identification. Here it comes. Right on schedule. Hello, familiar pattern. I see you, but I'm not going to believe everything you say. Situational predictability is powerful because it removes the element of surprise. You're prepared, aware, ready to meet the pattern with consciousness rather than unconscious reaction. Take a moment to identify your predictable trigger situations. When does negative thinking most reliably appear for you? Certain times of day? Certain environments? After certain types of interactions? During certain activities? In certain physical states? Write these down if you can. Make them explicit. Because explicit knowledge gives you power over what was previously unconscious. Now let's explore the practice of creating space. They interrupt themselves. They arise, are immediately recognized, and naturally dissolve before gaining power. This isn't suppression. It's not force. It's the natural result of weakened neural pathways. You've stopped feeding certain thought patterns so consistently that they've lost their automatic power. They still appear occasionally, but they're like smoke rather than fire, present but insubstantial, noticeable but not convincing. This is the promise of predictive recognition practiced over time. Not that you eliminate all negative thinking forever, but that it loses its grip, its believability, its power to create suffering. You sense it approaching, and often just that sensing is enough for it to dissipate. The pattern recognizes it's been seen and loses interest. This is freedom. Not freedom from thought, but freedom in relation to thought. The capacity to sense, recognize, and release without struggle. It develops gradually through committed practice. Through thousands of moments of recognition, of sensing, of early intervention. But it does develop. This is not fantasy. This is the documented experience of everyone who maintains this practice long enough. Your negative thinking can lose its power over you. You can become someone who senses mental turbulence before it develops and skillfully redirects before it overwhelms. This is mastery. This is predictive recognition developed to its fullest. This is what's possible for you, not immediately, not without practice, but inevitably, if you persist. So practice sensing the early signs. Notice the body's signals. Recognize the mental shifts. Pay attention to patterns and triggers, and respond early, gently, skillfully. Pause. Breathe. Redirect. Prevent storms before they form. Sense negativity before it crystallizes. Maintain the spaciousness that allows clear seeing. This is the path. This is the practice. This is how you develop the highest level of mastery. Not controlling thoughts, not suppressing negativity, but sensing its approach and meeting it with such clear awareness that it dissolves before it can take hold. Just as you can feel a storm coming, You can sense mental tension building, and when you detect that early shift, you pause. You breathe deeply. You redirect your focus. You've just prevented a storm before it began. This is predictive recognition. This is mastery. This is freedom. Chapter 5, Examination and Liberation. And now, we arrive at a threshold, a sacred place in this journey. A turning point where everything you have learned begins to crystallize into something transformative. Something that will change not just how you think, but how you experience reality itself. You have walked a long path to reach this moment. You have learned to recognize negative thoughts as they emerge from the depths of your consciousness. You have traced their patterns through the landscape of your mind, mapping the terrain of your inner world with patience and care. You have begun to sense them forming before they fully arrive, like feeling the first drops of rain before the storm. But recognition alone, while profound and necessary, is not the final destination. It is the doorway. And now, we walk through it. Take a breath with me. A deep, slow breath. Feel the air entering your lungs. Feel your chest expanding. Feel the life force moving through your body. And as you exhale, feel yourself settling into this moment, into this teaching, into this practice that has the power to liberate you from years, perhaps decades of mental suffering. Because we are about to explore something extraordinary. Something simple, yet revolutionary. We are going to learn how to examine our thoughts, how to question them, how to hold them up to the light of awareness and see them for what they truly are. And in that seeing, in that clear, unflinching examination, we find freedom. Let me begin with a truth that may surprise you. The vast majority of your negative thoughts are not true. Pause with that for a moment. Let it sink in. Not true. Oh, they feel true. They sound true. They arrive in your mind with such conviction, such authority, that you accept them immediately as facts about reality. But they are not facts. They are interpretations, stories, mental constructs built from fragments of experience, colored by emotion, filtered through years of conditioning. Your mind is not a camera recording objective reality. It is a storyteller, constantly weaving narratives about what things mean, what might happen, what people think, who you are. And most of these stories are fiction, but you believe them. You live as if they are true. You make decisions based on them. You feel emotions because of them. You limit yourself because of them, until you learn to examine them. This is what examination means. It means taking a thought, especially a negative, painful, limiting thought, and asking it a simple question, a question that has the power to shatter illusions and reveal truth. The question is this: is this actually true? Not, does this feel true? Not, have I thought this before? Not, do I believe this? But is this actually objectively, verifiably true? Let's explore this together. Let's go deep into this practice of inquiry, because it will become one of your most powerful tools for mental freedom. Imagine this scenario. You're at work, and you send an email to your supervisor suggesting a new idea for a project. You've thought about this idea carefully. You believe it could make a real difference. You hit send. And then, you wait. Hours pass. No response. A day passes. Still nothing. And somewhere in your mind, quietly at first, a thought begins to form. They think my idea is stupid. It whispers at first. But you don't catch it. You don't examine it. So it grows louder. They're ignoring me because the idea was terrible. Everyone probably thinks I don't know what I'm doing. I shouldn't have said anything. I always do this. I speak up and embarrass myself. Now the thought has become a cascade, a waterfall of negativity pouring through your consciousness. And here's what's remarkable. None of this has any basis in reality. You have no evidence, no facts, no actual information. Your supervisor could be overwhelmed with emails. They could be in back-to-back meetings. They could have read your idea and are taking time to think about it carefully. They could have every intention of responding but haven't gotten to it yet. There are countless possibilities, dozens of explanations that are just as likely, more likely than the story your mind created. But your mind selected one specific narrative, the most painful one, the one that confirms your deepest fears about yourself. And if you don't examine it, if you don't question it, you will believe it. You will feel the emotions it generates: shame, anxiety, inadequacy. And those emotions will affect how you show up the next day, how you interact with your supervisor, how you see yourself. All based on a thought that isn't true. This is why examination is so critical. This is why we must learn to pause and ask, is this actually true? Let's practice this together right now. I want you to bring to mind a negative thought you've had recently. Something that's been troubling you, creating stress or sadness or fear. Don't force it. Just notice what arises naturally as you turn your attention inward. Perhaps it's a thought about yourself. I'm not good enough. I'm failing. I'm too old, too young, too late, too broken. Perhaps it's a thought about others. Nobody really cares about me. They're judging me. I'm a burden to the people I love. Perhaps it's a thought about the future. Nothing is going to work out. I'm going to end up alone. I'll never achieve what I want. Whatever thought appears, hold it gently in your awareness. Don't judge yourself for having it. Don't try to push it away or fix it, just observe it. Look at it clearly, as if you're examining something under a microscope, with curiosity and interest rather than fear. Got it? Good. Now, ask the question, is this actually true? And wait, don't answer immediately. Don't let your mind rush to defend the thought or explain why you believe it. Just sit with the question. Let it hang in the air of your awareness like a bell that's been rung, its tone reverberating through the space of your mind. Is this actually true? What evidence do you have? What facts? What objective, verifiable information supports this thought? Not feelings, not fears, not assumptions or interpretations. Facts. You may find something interesting happens when you ask this question with genuine curiosity. The thought begins to waver. Its certainty starts to crack, because most negative thoughts, when examined honestly, cannot withstand scrutiny. They collapse under the weight of inquiry. I'm not good enough. Compared to whom? By what standard? In what specific way? Can you prove this absolutely? Have you never succeeded at anything? Has no one ever valued you or your contributions? Nobody cares about me. Nobody? Not a single person? Is there no evidence of anyone showing care or concern or love? Not once, not ever? Nothing ever works out. Nothing? Ever? Is that literally true? Have you never experienced anything positive? Has nothing in your entire life ever gone well? The mind deals in extremes, in absolutes, in words like always and never and nobody and nothing. But reality is rarely absolute. Life is nuanced, complex, full of shades of gray. When you examine your thoughts closely, you begin to see the distortions, the exaggerations, the ways your mind has twisted reality to fit a painful narrative, and in seeing these distortions clearly, their power over you begins to dissolve. But let's go deeper, because there are layers to this practice of examination, multiple levels of inquiry, each one revealing something profound about the nature of your thoughts and your suffering. The first level, which we've just explored, is factual examination. You ask, is this objectively true? Can I verify this? What evidence supports this thought? This level alone can free you from tremendous suffering, because it reveals how many of your painful thoughts are based on nothing but assumption and imagination. But there's a second level, a deeper form of inquiry. Even if a thought has some basis in fact, you can ask, is this thought helpful? Let me give you an example. Perhaps you gave a presentation at work and it didn't go as well as you hoped. You stumbled over some words. You forgot a point you wanted to make. Someone in the audience looked bored. These things happened. They are facts. They are true in the sense that they occurred. But then your mind generates thoughts about these facts. I'm terrible at public speaking. Everyone thinks I'm incompetent. I'll never be good at this. I should just give up. Now, there may be a grain of truth in the observation that your presentation wasn't perfect. But these thoughts that follow, are they helpful? Do they make you better at public speaking? Do they motivate you to improve? Do they give you insight or clarity or strength? Or do they simply make you feel terrible? Do they reinforce limiting beliefs? Do they make it less likely you'll try again? This is crucial to understand. The mind often confuses self-criticism with self-improvement. It believes that if it beats you up enough, you'll somehow become better. But this is a lie, a destructive illusion. Real growth doesn't come from shame. It comes from honest assessment combined with compassion, from learning combined with encouragement, from awareness combined with self-love. Harsh self-criticism doesn't make you stronger. It makes you smaller, more afraid, less willing to take risks or try new things. So when a negative thought arises, even if it has some factual basis, ask yourself, is this thought helping me? Is it serving my growth and well-being? Or is it just creating suffering? If it's only creating suffering, if it's not genuinely helping you learn or improve or heal, then you can let it go. You don't need it. It's not serving you. It's just old conditioning, old patterns of self-attack that you inherited somewhere along the way, and you have the power to release them. There's a third level of examination, perhaps the most powerful one, the one that can shift your entire perspective on what matters in life. You ask, will this thought matter in a year? In 5 years? At the end of my life? This question has a way of cutting through the noise, of revealing what's truly important and what's merely the static of temporary stress and social conditioning. Take that embarrassing moment in the presentation. Will it matter in a year? Probably not. In 5 years? Almost certainly not. At the end of your life? Absolutely not. What will matter at the end of your life? The relationships you built, the love you gave and received, the courage you showed in facing your fears, the kindness you offered, the moments of genuine connection and joy, the ways you grew and evolved as a human being, not the small embarrassments, not the temporary setbacks, not what strangers thought of you in passing moments, but we give those temporary things so much power. We let them consume hours, days, weeks of our mental energy. We replay them endlessly. We build entire identities around them. And then years pass and we can't even remember what we were so worried about. This long view, this perspective from the end of life, is a profound gift. It shows you what's real and what's illusion, what deserves your attention and what deserves to be released. I want to share a story with you, a true story that illustrates this principle beautifully. There was a woman who spent 30 years of her life consumed by social anxiety. Every interaction was torture. Every party, every meeting, every casual conversation was filtered through the lens of, what do they think of me? Did I say something wrong? Do they think I'm stupid, awkward, boring? She replayed conversations in her mind for days. She agonized over tiny missteps. She avoided social situations whenever possible because the mental aftermath was so exhausting. And then, her mother died. Suddenly, sitting beside her mother's hospital bed, then planning the funeral, then sorting through her mother's belongings, she realized something that cracked her open. All those years she'd spent worrying about what people thought. All that mental energy consumed by imagined judgments and social performances. And now her mother was gone. The person she loved most in the world was gone. And not once, not a single time, had her mother cared whether she said something awkward at a party. Not once had her mother loved her less because she stumbled over words or forgot someone's name or looked uncomfortable. Her mother had loved her, simply, completely, without condition. And the woman realized, this is what matters. This love, this connection, not the performance, not the image, not the endless self-consciousness. From that moment, something shifted. When she found herself spiraling into social anxiety, into worrying about what someone thought of her, she would ask, will this matter when I'm dying? Will I look back and wish I'd worried less about this person's opinion and lived more fully? And the answer was always no. This question became her liberation. Will this matter at the end? Try it with your own thoughts, the ones that plague you, the ones that steal your peace, that argument with a colleague, that mistake you made, that person who doesn't like you, that thing you said that came out wrong, that comparison you made between yourself and someone else. Will any of it matter at the end of your life? And if not, why give it power today? Now, I want to address something important, something subtle but crucial about this practice of examination. Examination is not the same as arguing with your thoughts. Many people, when they first learn about questioning their thoughts, turn it into a debate. They try to prove their negative thoughts wrong. They build cases against them. They marshal evidence. I'm not a failure because I succeeded at this thing and this thing and this thing. And sometimes this works. Sometimes it's helpful to remind yourself of your strengths and accomplishments. But often, This approach just creates more mental noise, more thinking about thinking, more effort and strain. True examination is quieter than that, more spacious, more gentle. You're not fighting with the thought. You're not trying to force it to go away. You're simply looking at it, observing it, holding it up to the light of awareness, and often that's enough. When you truly see a thought clearly, when you recognize it as a mental construct rather than reality itself, it naturally loses its grip on you. It's like what happens when you're watching a scary movie. While you're absorbed in the story, your heart races, your muscles tense, the fear feels real. But then you remember, this is just a movie. None of this is actually happening, and immediately, the fear releases. Not because you argued it away, not because you forced yourself to feel differently, but because you saw through the illusion. Your negative thoughts are like that movie. They create a compelling story. They generate real emotions, but they're not reality itself. They're interpretations, narratives, mental events. And when you see them as such, when you recognize them clearly for what they are, they lose their power to control you. This is the essence of examination, not warfare, not debate, just clear seeing. Let's practice this together again, right now. I want you to bring to mind another negative thought, perhaps the same one from before, or perhaps a different one that's been weighing on you. Hold it in your awareness. Feel its presence. Notice the emotions it generates in your body, the heaviness, the tension, the contraction. And now, simply observe it, as if you're watching a cloud pass across the sky, with neither attraction nor aversion, just neutral, curious observation. Notice the words of the thought, the tone of the voice in your head. Is it harsh, fearful, critical, resigned? Notice how the thought tries to convince you it's true, how it presents itself as fact, as reality, as something you must believe. And then, gently, ask your questions. Is this actually true? What evidence do I have? Wait. Listen. See what arises. Is this thought helpful? Is it serving my growth and well-being? Wait. Observe. Notice what happens to the thought when you shine the light of inquiry on it. Will this matter at the end of my life? Is this truly important in the grand scheme of things? And as you ask these questions, notice if the thought begins to shift, to soften, to reveal cracks in its certainty. You're not trying to make it shift. You're not forcing anything. You're simply observing what happens when thoughts are examined rather than believed automatically. This is the practice. This is how you free yourself, not through force, not through willpower, not through positive thinking or affirmations or trying to replace negative thoughts with positive ones, but through clear seeing, through inquiry, through the light of awareness. And here's what you'll discover if you practice this regularly, patiently, with consistency and care. Most of your negative thoughts cannot survive this process. They collapse. They dissolve. They reveal themselves as the illusions they always were. Not all of them. Some thoughts point to real issues that need attention. Some reveal genuine concerns or areas where you need to make changes in your life. But the vast majority, they're just mental noise. Habitual patterns of thinking that have been running in the background of your mind for years, perhaps decades, without ever being questioned. And the moment you question them, really question them with genuine curiosity, they lose their power. What remains after this examination? What's left when the illusions fall away? Peace, clarity, space. Not because you've suppressed anything, not because you've forced yourself into positivity, but because you've seen through the stories. You've recognized what's real and what's imagined. And in that recognition, you discover something extraordinary. You are not your thoughts. You never were. You are the awareness that observes them, the consciousness that witnesses them arise and pass, and that awareness, that witnessing presence, is inherently free, inherently peaceful, inherently whole, It was always there beneath the storm of thinking, but you couldn't see it because you were identified with the thoughts themselves. You thought you were the storm, but you're not the storm. You're the sky in which the storm appears, and the sky is never disturbed by the weather passing through it. Let me share one more story with you. A teaching story that captures the essence of what we're exploring. There was once a Zen student who came to his master in great distress. "Master," he said, his voice trembling, "my mind is full of terrible thoughts. Dark, shameful, frightening thoughts. I try to stop them, but they keep coming. I try to replace them with better thoughts, but the negative ones always return. How can I get rid of them? How can I make them stop?" The master listened with a gentle smile. Then, without saying a word, he stood up and walked to a table where a glass of muddy water sat. "Come here," the master said. "Watch this." The student approached, confused but obedient. The master picked up the glass and showed it to the student. The water was thick with mud, completely clouded, impossible to see through. "This is your mind right now," the master said. "Full of disturbance, full of swirling thoughts that cloud your vision." Then the master set the glass down on the table, and he did nothing. He simply stood there waiting. The student watched, uncertain what he was supposed to be seeing. And slowly, gradually, the mud began to settle. Particles drifted downward. The water above them grew clearer. More and more mud sank to the bottom. After several minutes, the water was completely transparent, crystal clear. The mud remained at the bottom of the glass, but it was no longer clouding the water. "Do you see?" the master asked. The student stared at the glass, and suddenly, understanding flooded through him. "You don't need to get rid of the mud," the master continued. "You don't need to filter it out or fight with it or force it away. You just need to stop stirring it up, be still. Stop agitating the water with your resistance and your struggling, and the mud will settle naturally. The water will clear on its own." The student bowed deeply, tears in his eyes. "Your thoughts are like that mud," the master said gently. "They swirl and cloud your awareness, but they settle naturally when you stop fighting with them. When you stop feeding them with attention and emotion and resistance, when you simply observe them with calm, clear awareness. The mud doesn't go away. It's still there at the bottom. Thoughts will continue to arise, but they don't cloud your vision anymore. They don't control you, because you've stopped stirring them up. You've learned to be still, to watch, to let them settle. This is the practice of examination. This is the path to liberation, not through warfare with your thoughts, not through suppression or forced positivity or endless affirmations, but through stillness, through observation, through gentle, persistent inquiry that allows truth to reveal itself. When you examine your thoughts, when you ask them questions, when you look at them clearly without judgment or resistance, they lose their hypnotic power, they settle, they clarify, and what remains is the clear water of your awareness, pure, peaceful, free. This freedom is your birthright. It was always there beneath the swirling thoughts. You didn't need to create it or earn it or achieve it. You just needed to stop stirring up the mud, to be still, to look clearly. And in that stillness, in that clear seeing, you discover what has always been true. You are not your thoughts. You are the vast, spacious awareness in which thoughts appear and disappear, and that awareness is inherently free, inherently peaceful, inherently whole. Nothing can disturb it. Nothing can diminish it. Nothing can take it away. This is who you truly are. This is what examination reveals, not a new self, not a fixed self, but the quiet witnessing presence that has been here all along, patiently waiting for you to remember. Welcome home. Conclusion: freedom through awareness. And so, we come to the end of this journey together, though in truth it is not an ending at all. It is a beginning. Because what you have learned here is not meant to remain as knowledge, as concepts stored in your mind to be recalled when convenient. It is not a theory to understand intellectually and then file away in some mental archive. It is meant to be lived, practiced, embodied in every moment of your daily life. Take a breath with me now, a deep, slow, nourishing breath. Feel the air moving into your lungs. Feel your chest rising. Feel the life force that sustains you flowing through your body with each breath. And as you exhale, feel yourself settling, landing, arriving fully in this present moment. Feel yourself here, present, alive, aware, This awareness, this simple, clear presence that notices the breath, that hears these words, that observes your thoughts and feelings as they arise and pass, this is your greatest treasure, your deepest truth, your most precious gift. It has always been here. You did not create it through this audiobook. You did not earn it or achieve it through effort or discipline. You simply remembered it. You turned your attention toward it. You recognized what was already true, what has always been true beneath the noise of constant thinking. You came here perhaps believing that negative thoughts were your enemy, something to battle against, something to defeat or overcome through strength or strategy or sheer willpower. You may have spent years trying to stop thinking negatively, years beating yourself up for having thoughts you judged as wrong or weak or broken, years feeling like there was something fundamentally flawed in you because your mind kept producing thoughts you didn't want. But now you understand a deeper truth, a liberating truth. Negative thoughts are not your enemy. They are not evidence of your failure or your brokenness. They are not proof that something is wrong with you. They are simply thoughts, mental events arising and passing in the vast space of your consciousness, like clouds drifting across the sky, like waves rolling across the surface of the ocean. The sky is not disturbed by the clouds. It does not fight them or resist them or judge them. It simply allows them to pass through, knowing that its own nature, spacious, clear, infinite, remains unchanged by whatever weather moves through it. The ocean is not disturbed by the waves on its surface. Deep below in the silent depths there is stillness, peace, unchanging presence regardless of what storms may rage above. You are that sky. You are that ocean. Deep, vast, spacious, fundamentally undisturbed by the passing weather of your thoughts and emotions. This is the freedom we have been exploring throughout this journey. Not the freedom from ever having another negative thought. You will continue to have them because you are human, and thinking is what human minds naturally do, but the freedom of knowing that you are not defined by those thoughts, not controlled by them, not limited by them, not diminished by them. You are the awareness that observes them, the consciousness that witnesses them arise and pass away, and that awareness that witnessing presence is always free, always peaceful at its core, always whole and complete, even when thoughts of brokenness arise, always spacious and clear even when the mind becomes clouded with negativity. This is the truth that will set you free. Not someday in the distant future, not after you've perfected this practice or eliminated all negative thinking. Right now, in this moment. You are already free. You just need to remember, to recognize, to return to the awareness that you truly are. Let's take a moment to reflect on what you've learned, what you've discovered about yourself and your mind during this time we've spent together. You learned to recognize your thoughts, to see them clearly as they arise instead of being unconsciously swept away by them. You learned that recognition, simple, clear awareness of what's happening in your mind, is the foundation of all mental freedom. You learned to identify patterns, to understand that your negative thinking isn't random, but follows specific triggers and rhythms. You learned to map your inner weather, to know when storms are likely and what conditions create them. This knowledge is power, the power to prepare, to respond consciously rather than react automatically. You learned predictive recognition, the subtle art of sensing negative thoughts before they fully form, catching that first whisper of disturbance before it amplifies into a storm. You learned to feel the shift in your energy, the tightening in your body, the change in your mental atmosphere that signals negativity approaching. And you learned examination, the practice of inquiry that dissolves illusions and reveals truth. You learned to question your thoughts gently but firmly, to ask, is this true? Is this helpful? Will this matter? And in asking these questions, you discovered that most of your suffering is built on thoughts that cannot withstand honest scrutiny. These are not small learnings. These are not minor adjustments to your thinking patterns. These are fundamental shifts in how you relate to your own mind, in how you experience reality itself, and they are gifts you will carry with you for the rest of your life. But here is something crucial I need you to understand. Something I need you to take deeply into your heart. This practice, this mastery of thought, is not about perfection. It is not about never having another negative thought. It is not about maintaining constant peace and clarity without ever getting lost or confused or overwhelmed. You will have difficult days. Days when you forget everything you've learned here. Days when you get completely swept away by negative thinking and don't catch yourself until hours, or even days later. You will have moments When the old patterns return with such force that it feels like you've made no progress at all. When you fall back into old ways of thinking, old habits of self-criticism, old spirals of worry and fear. And in those moments you may feel disappointed in yourself. You may think, I should be past this by now. I should be better at this. I learned all these tools, so why am I still struggling? Please hear this. That disappointment, that self-judgment, it's just another thought, another pattern, another opportunity to practice what you've learned. You have not failed. You are not broken. You are human. And being human means living with a mind that generates thoughts constantly, many of them habitual, many of them negative, many of them unhelpful. Mastery is not about never getting lost. It's about knowing how to find your way back. It's about the moment you catch yourself, maybe 10 minutes into a negative spiral, maybe an hour, maybe a day. And you remember. You pause. You take a breath. You recognize what's happening. And you return to awareness. That moment, that returning, that is mastery. Not the absence of negative thoughts, but the ability to recognize them and come back to clarity. Again and again and again, as many times as necessary for the rest of your life. This is the practice, and it never ends, because you are a living, growing, evolving being, and your mind will continue to generate thoughts and patterns and reactions as long as you live. But each time you practice, each time you catch yourself, each time you pause, each time you question a thought or choose awareness over automatic reaction, you are strengthening new neural pathways. You are training your mind. You are making these skills more and more accessible. Over time, the pause becomes more natural. The recognition happens more quickly. The examination becomes almost automatic. The return to peace becomes easier and faster. Not because you've eliminated negativity, but because you've developed mastery in relating to it. This is the path, and you are already walking it. As you move forward from here, I want to give you a simple daily practice, something you can do each day to strengthen and deepen what you've learned. Each morning, before you begin your day, before you check your phone or dive into tasks or responsibilities, take 3 conscious breaths, just 3, slow and deep and intentional. And as you breathe, place your hand on your heart and say to yourself silently or aloud, I am not my thoughts. I am the awareness that observes them. Today I choose to remember this truth, that's all. Just this simple ritual, this gentle reminder of what's real, this conscious intention to remember who you truly are beneath the thinking. And then, throughout your day, practice micro moments of awareness. Whenever you notice stress building, whenever you catch yourself spiraling into negativity, whenever you feel that tightening or heaviness that signals difficult thoughts arising, pause. Just for a moment. Just for a single breath. Place your hand on your heart again if you can. Feel yourself here. And ask, what am I believing right now? What thought am I taking as truth? Often that's enough. That simple pause. That moment of recognition. That gentle inquiry, it breaks the spell. It creates space. It reminds you that you have a choice. You don't need hours of meditation. You don't need to retreat from the world or spend vast amounts of time in spiritual practice. You just need these small moments. These brief returns to awareness scattered throughout your day like seeds of consciousness. String enough of these moments together, and they become your life. They become who you are. Not someone who never thinks negatively, but someone who knows how to meet negativity with wisdom and compassion. Someone who knows how to return to peace. This is mastery. This is freedom. And it's available to you right now, in this moment and every moment that follows.